Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing well on this Monday. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. All right, so BYU is doing work in the transfer portal. We've already acknowledged that. We talked about the fact that I have questions marks about what they're doing with the big men, but there is no question that they have been very meticulous in identifying guards that they are interested in the transfer portal. Obviously, Robert Wright III, by the time you listen to this podcast, maybe his signing is official, but nothing I have heard / seen indicates anything is wrong with him ultimately landing at BYU. Just a matter of, I think, getting pen to paper as it were, and then he'll be locked in. But that brings us to the backup to Robert Wright III as BYU's point guard. And could that be UMass Lowell transfer Martin Somerville? He's planning on taking a visit to BYU beginning today through tomorrow, and then he'll be visiting Florida State tomorrow and Wednesday, according to 24/7 Sports. Why is BYU interested in America East Rookie of the Year? Well, here's the reason why. We've talked about this in the past on the podcast. He averaged 13.6 points, 2.9 rebounds, and 3.7 assists this past year, all the while shooting 40.5% from three. There you have it, folks. He makes threes in bunches. He shoots at a pretty high level. The best part, he's 6'3", and he has got time on his side. The fact that he shot 75 out of 185 in nearly 6 attempts per game, that fits exactly what BYU wants from their guard play. They want guys who are unafraid of putting it up when given the opportunity to do so. And as I mentioned, if you can make better than 40% of those, you absolutely will take that. And the other thing about it is he also played heavy minutes as well, 31.6 minutes and over 35 minutes in conference play. So the nice part is he's battle tested. He's proven. Now, the America East Conference and the Big 12 are two very different levels. We all know that, but still, he has proven himself at the collegiate level, and that's why I think BYU is taking a swing on this young man. They believe that they can bring him in, and with some additional fine-tuning, some extra seasoning, he can emerge on the other side potentially as a star player for BYU. I think that Robert Wright III is coming to BYU. The whole thought he's going to increase his stock, and at some point in the relatively near future, he's going to take the leap to the professional ranks. Well, Martin Somerville could come in thinking, okay, if I play second fiddle or alongside Robert Wright III, I'm going to have extra spotlight cast on me. Same thing with what AJ Dybantsa will bring to BYU. If you did not see what he did at the Nike Hoop Summit over the weekend, folks, we are going to be absolutely blessed to watch AJ Debonsa play basketball in Provo, Utah. He was absolutely incredible. 24 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals. Anybody who tells you that AJ Debonsa is a one-trick pony is straight up lying to your face. And that skill set that AJ brings to the table is why guys like Martin Somerville should be interested in playing for the BYU Cougars. I've said it once, I'll say it again. There's going to be a massive spotlight cast upon BYU because of AJ Dybantsa. Guys like Robert Wright III realize it, and that's why they're coming to BYU, because they can be seen more readily. And it's not to say that Robert Wright III was in a bad spot. He's playing at Baylor. Scott Drew has got a nationally renowned program down there in Waco, but Robert Wright III wants a bigger role. He wants to play alongside players who he feels like, at least in his mind, fit his skill set better. And that's what AJ Dybantsa, Richie Saunders, Keba Keita, on down the list all offer. That's why I think a guy like Martin Somerville is coming to BYU to take a look. Doesn't even include the conversation we haven't had on this podcast because it came over the weekend that Tanner Toolson, the former BYU guard turned UVU Wolverine, was on campus for BYU this past week. Now, Tanner, I'm looking at him as more of a Trevin Knell or a Dawson Baker type guy, where he's a second string scoring forward who comes in off the bench and offers premier shooting because he's turned into a really, really lethal 3-point shooter. Noticing a trend with BYU wants from their role players? Oh, yes. They want guys to shoot the three at a high level. We talked about Makai Mason last week. We've talked about guys like Robert Wright. Now, Robert Wright doesn't shoot 40%, but his ability to command an offense, get to the rim with impunity, that separates the fact that his shooting numbers may not be the level these other guys are. But if you want to play for BYU as a guard on the wing, you have to be able to shoot the three, and it helps if you're shooting at 40+%. That's why I think BYU is doing a really bang-up job at identifying players, specific players that they're interested in. Tanner Toolson already played at BYU. He knows what it's all about. He's been playing literally 10 minutes up the road at UVU. He's a BYU lifer. His dad, Andy, his cousin, Jake, his brother, Connor, there's another cousin I remember played for UVU. Was it Rylan? I remember who it was. But the thing is, the Toolson name is all over BYU. His dad coached at BYU. So Tanner would be a really, really nice addition for BYU, but he has 2 years on his side, obviously, to come in and make an impact maybe over 2 more years. But a guy like Martin Somerville here, he's got 3 years of eligibility. BYU's recruiting guys who have already proven themselves at the collegiate level, but also have time on their side, speaking of eligibility, so that way they're not being one and dones. Kevin Young, I think, understands that the whole adage of get old, stay old, yes, it's a really, really nice thing to have. He will always, so long as he's head coach at BYU, have one and done players. That's what AJ Dybantsa is. That's what Jaeger Demon was. They're going to be premier talents who come into BYU for a very short stint. But I think he understands that you have to supplement the top-rated, top-tier prospect with proven veterans alongside them who can obviously lend veteran expertise to a roster. That's what a Tanner Toolson can do. That's what a Makai Mason can do. And I think even with just one season playing at the America East level, I think that's what Martin Somerville can come in and provide for BYU, is a steady hand that understands the rigors and everything that it comes with playing in college basketball. That's what I like about how BYU's game plan has kind of been executed here in the transfer portal. It's not been throwing offers to everybody out there in the transfer portal. Yes, I'm sure they've offered their fair share, but more often than not, the stories that seem to come out about the guys BYU is interested in, the guys, more importantly, who are making visits to BYU, because if they're making a visit, they've got reciprocal interest. They wouldn't be making a visit to Provo, Utah, if they didn't have some interest in the Cougars. And that indicates to me that BYU, yes, they have done their homework on these players. They understand what they offer. They've looked at the advanced analytics. They've watched the film. They've run all the numbers. They believe these players can help them. And if Martin Somerville likes what he sees, who am I to say that BYU doesn't make him a good NIL offer and he decides that BYU is where he's going to play and take the leap up from the mid-major to the high-major Power 5 level in college basketball and see what he can do. I really like I said, the way BYU's approaching this. They're being smart, they're being heady, and at the same time, they're not going out there and trying to just stuff the roster just with guys. They understand there's a calculated process to this of finding the right mix of players. Obviously, it's AJ Debonsa, Richie Saunders. They're going to be the 2 lead dogs on this team. I think everybody who comes to BYU understands that the offense is going to be run through those 2 guys. Robert Wright III is a premier player in his own right, but I think he fully understands that this season may not be his time to shine, but in future seasons, it will be. That's the thing about this. There's a veteran nature that you need to get. The old adage, I said, the get old, stay old. Yeah, that balance of having premier talent alongside veteran rosters, that's a nice mix for BYU to utilize, and hopefully it plays out the way that BYU needs it to when it comes to building their roster on into the future. But sure looks like BYU is being very smart about that right now, and maybe Martin Somerville is a key cog that could be that combo guard, but more importantly, a key piece as a ball handler to help run this offense for the BYU Cougars. All right. We've talked a lot of basketball today. There's obviously transfer portal news in the college football world because, hey, the transfer portal window opens once again later this week. We already know one guy who enrolled at BYU just a few months ago is already on his way out of the program. Why in the heck would Kel Breslin already be leaving BYU? We'll try and make heads and tails of that coming up next right here on Locked On Cougars.